Hello, this is Eric Bobrow. In this ArchiCAD video tutorial, I'll teach you how to use the new building materials in ArchiCAD 17 to create clean section drawings and beautifully detailed 3D models. So here we have a new file created from the US residential template. So this is what Graphisoft ships out with ArchiCAD in the United States. And I'm going to go and create a box of walls using the default wall settings, like that. Then I'll switch to interior walls here and do just a couple of walls and switch from the exterior wall that was set as the default, and I'll pick an interior partition wall just to get started. And then I'll draw a simple set of a couple of walls here and complete them. When I go to 3D, we see, as we would expect, the building model, but as I zoom in, we'll see a little bit more detail than we had before. You can see that each of these walls, and when I zoom in further, you can see how the walls now show up, at least their edges show up with the composition in 3D, whereas previously they did not. Now let's put a slab on here. So I'll just go to the slab tool and I'll use the default settings for the slab, and I'll just place this to the outside face by clicking quickly here and go to 3D. You can see the top of the slab is some type of a carpet texture here, and when I rotate around, you can see that the outside of the slab actually is showing more detail. In fact, it's rather odd. It's showing the framing space and then underlay, and the carpet is sticking all the way out there. So that's rather odd and not going to be what we want. So we need to learn how to control that. Now if I cut a section through this, here we'll see what's going on in a little bit clearer detail. So when I open the section, we can see that the slab has all of these composite skins, and it's sticking all the way out to the edge of the wall. Now what about this new thing in ArchiCAD 17 where it's supposed to clean up these intersections automatically? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is to select the slab and look at the settings here that are brand new in ArchiCAD 17, allowing me to set the height, which is this 0 height relative to the current story, either at the top, the bottom, top of core, or bottom of core. Now let me just switch it to the top of core, and you'll see how the slab instantly repositions itself. So the top of the subflooring, which is the core here, is now at the 0. And guess what? This outer wall now sticks into it. In fact, if I select the slab, you can see this little dot indicating that the slab does stick out here, but the wall had priority because these interior surfaces or skins had lower priority. Basically, they're made out of something softer or less strong compared to this. Now, if we go to 3D, we're going to see a slight change. This has now lost the carpet, and we're only seeing the framing and the underlay. But let's say that we wanted to make this match the exterior. Well, I can select this and go to what used to be called the materials. Now it's called surfaces. When I press down on the little paintbrush, you'll see that I can override the surface. Instead of it being done by the building materials, which obviously is showing the various skins, I could override this. As soon as I do that, the entire slab, at least the part that actually was the model extended out, is now a single color. If I'd like to join or merge in, then I would pick the same color, the default wall's exterior color that was used by the walls. So now we have a nice clean result. However, when I go back to the section, it has not changed at all, because really that was only affecting the surface appearance of the outside there. So let me just undo that back a couple of steps, and let's clean it up a different way that in general would be preferred for ArchiCAD 17. So let me go back to that section, and let's take a look at this wall. This wall here, if I'd like it to have the outside material extend down, then maybe I should take the bottom of it and use the standard pet palette and extend it down, perhaps to the bottom of the core or bottom of the skin. Now this wall, or this slab, is actually something that is got a little bit of sheathing at the bottom. It is really intended for interior, like a floor and ceiling combination. But let's ignore that for now. We'll clean that up later. Let me take it all the way down to here. But look, nothing happened. Why? Because these materials here are not as strong as the underlay. They're being blocked there. Now, how do we know what they're made from and what strength they have? Well, if I select this, I can right-click on it, and there's a new command in ArchiCAD 17 saying Edit Selected Composite. It allows you to select a composite element like a wall or a slab and instantly see the settings for the composite. Previously, we would have to go to the Options menu, Element Attributes, Composites, and manually find the one that was selected. But now it goes directly there. Now we can see we've got generic exterior material and generic interior material. So you can see there are a couple of skins that are part of this. Now each one of them has some built-in settings for its appearance and its strength. Now let's take a look at the floor composite and use the same shortcut. Now, by the way, under this element settings here, actually, I'm sorry, this command here that's saying Edit Selected Composite, I use the keyboard shortcuts in the work environment, and I added a shortcut, so I can actually use Shift-Control-C to open that up. And you may want to create a shortcut for this because it's such a frequently used tool as far as I'm concerned, or it will be. Now you can see here that we've got carpet and then rubber and underlayment. This would be the the structural underlay, and then wood eye joists. So, and then we've got this gypsum board down below. Now, how would we know the strength of these things? These things here are part of the new category of building materials. So each one of these you can see has a fill and an appearance in terms of a surface. Now, one thing I'd like to see here is the ability to see the strength of this particular material in the composite structures, but we can't see it here. We have to go to the Options menu, Element Attributes, Building Materials, where we can see the underlayment and wood eye joists. Now, if you look closely, you'll see that these are highlighted. In fact, all of the building materials that are used in this particular composite are highlighted because I have that selected. It's a great time saver. So we can see, the wood eye joists, the main framing, have a particular strength, 560. So that is stronger than some things. For example, the gypsum board is 300, so it's much less strong. Now, to be able to compare these two or to possibly modify it, I'm going to select both of them at the same time because it'll allow me to see, in terms of the building materials, all of them. Remember, the wall was generic exterior and generic interior. Well, the exterior is set for 530, the interior for 590. Now that is a bit odd because exterior generally, as far as I'm concerned, should be a higher value. But in this case, the main thing is that it should be higher than the underlayment and the wood eye joists if we want it to have priority. So let's take this exterior material and take it up to 630. Then it's just a little bit above the 625 of the underlayment. When I say OK, we're going to see this instantly changes the intersection here. Now let's not worry about the gypsum board underneath here. Let's look at what happens on the outside as well. So if I go to the outside, you can see how this actually has corrected here. But of course, I only did one wall, and I want to do all of them. Well, there are a number of options that we can do. If I undo this here, we go back to the section. If I undo this, if I take this back up here, let me demonstrate another option that we have. We can select this wall and slab and go to the Edit menu, and there's a new command under Reshape that says Adjust Elements to Slabs. This allows us to take walls, for example, and adjust their bottom or their top or both. In this case, I might take it to the bottom of the core or just to the bottom of the whole thing. Let me take it to the bottom of the whole thing and we'll see what happens. It tells me that it's adjusted one of one elements, and you can see how it's gone down like that. Now the reason why I wanted to show you that, and let's just undo it, is that I can go to the 3D window, let's just say I've undone it, remember, I can go to the 3D window and I could select all of these exterior walls here and do the same thing. In fact, I can select them and go to the edit menu, reshape, and say adjust elements to slabs, and then go ahead and it'll find the slabs down below. And you can see 4 elements were all adjusted like that. And now if I go back to that section, we'll see that it's not only cleaned up here, but it's cleaned up over on this side as well. Now in the middle, notice that this already is cleaned up. Why? Because this wall is set to rest at the 0 level and the slab is set to have the 0 level be the core. So the wall is sitting on the structural part of the slab, and its gypsum board is slightly stronger than the carpet and the rubber underlay. So that's why it's cleaning up without any extra work. Now let's take a look at what happens if we were to stack walls to make a multi-story building. So we'll go back to the floor plan, and I'll go to the wall tool, select all walls, and then I'll shift click to select the slab. I'll copy, and I'll go up a story. I'll use the keyboard shortcut Command up arrow or Control up arrow. I'm now on the next story up, and I paste, and you can see now we have on this upper floor we have the same layout. When I go to 3D, we're going to see that the building has now gotten taller, looks nice. When we go to that section, and I'm using the keyboard shortcut F6 to go to the section, you can see that it's already done some cleanup here. Now it may not be actually complete, but you can see that it's done much more than what ArchiCAD has used to do before version 17. Now if I select the slab, you can see it's actually sticking out here, but it's giving way because the walls have higher priority. Now there is something a little odd here. This wall framing is stopping at the gypsum. So the gypsum here should actually stop at the surface, and perhaps we should have some interior gypsum on this as well. So what is causing that problem? Well, the issue is that this wall that I copied from down below was extended all the way down to the lower part of the slab, and this lower wall, even though its handles point up here, is giving way to the upper wall. So it's basically stopping because the upper wall comes down here. And because this upper wall is breaking at the underlay here, the gypsum is continuing. So what we want to do is select this wall and adjust it. And I can use the, another way that we can do this is just Edit Menu, Reshape, Adjust, which does have a built-in keyboard shortcut of Command or Control hyphen or dash. And then I can click. You notice the funny cursor on the slab, and then say I'd like to adjust this to, let's say, the bottom of it to the top of the core. So that'll be right up here at the underlay. When I do that, you'll see how this highlighted wall now stops at, in fact, this is the base of the story, and the lower wall, which already was going up to here, now is allowed to continue up here. And the drywall or the gypsum board has been has stopped. So now we've got a cleaner result. Now it's still, there are a couple of things I'd like to adjust about this. One is that we perhaps want to have some gypsum board on this wall. So let me go select this, and remember I'll use that keyboard shortcut to edit the selected composite. You can also just right click on the wall and open that up. Now you can see it's got generic exterior and generic interior. Let me just, if I click here, it'll actually bring up this little pop-up menu, but I can also just click here and then it will select it but not bring up the pop-up. I found that to be a useful shortcut. Let me insert a skin and change this to the gypsum. Let's see, here, gypsum board, and make it perhaps an appropriate thickness. And now you can see it's got just a skin. Always the top or first item will be the main reference, so for the outside of the wall going towards the inside, or the top of the slab going down towards the bottom. Now let me just say OK. I'm redefining this wall type, which means all walls, see both down here and up here and on the other side over here, have this drywall. And you can see that this is cleaned up. Now, again, we have the issue here where this wall, even though it would like to go up, is being blocked by the upper wall. So let's take a look in 3D and see if I can select all of these upper walls here. And I don't remember which one is which that I've done, but I'm going to just use the adjust command. Remember, we can use the adjust with the keyboard shortcut, Command Dash or Control Dash. Click on the slab right here in 3D and say take it to the core top. And 3 of 4 were adjusted. Why? Because one of them had already been done. If I go back to the section, you can see now this drywall is wrapping around. So basically, by changing the definition of this composite to add the gypsum, it's now cleaning up automatically in all of the sections. So every section would clean up, which is wonderful. Now finally, this structural slab may, instead of stopping and hanging from the inside of this wall, it may rest across the top, depending upon your construction method. So how would we make that happen? Well, let's select both of these again and go back to the Options, Element Attributes, Building Materials, where we can inspect all the ones, so I'll be highlighted. Now remember, the generic interior material was set up with 590, and that's going, it has higher priority than the I-joists, which are the ones for the slab. Now we could change the interior material to be lower, and that would work, but what I'd actually prefer is to be specific about this. I'm going to take this wall and do my shortcut for editing the composite and change the generic interior material. Instead of being generic, let me choose to make it wood framing, for example. And if I do that, you see it has a material if any part was exposed, but it also changed its priority level. And maybe I want to be more specific about its thickness here. So let's say that instead of 6 inches, it's going to be 5.5 because it's a 2 by 6, something like that. Now that makes the wall slightly thinner, and I say OK, and you can see how this cleaned up beautifully. This wood framing here got a little thinner. It has lower priority, so it now is cut by the I-joist, and the actual wrapping here automatically adjusted because this element actually is colliding with the other one, and ArchiCAD is cleaning up that intersection. So ArchiCAD is doing a tremendous amount of work to make these sorts of intersections work, and you can adjust priorities and you can adjust which components are within which elements. In other words, I changed the definition of this wall type, and therefore, because the interior, the core is framing rather than generic, it now works, intersects differently. Now, one more thing we'll take a look at is we've got this building with certain story heights. Now, if I go and change the story heights, and my favorite way is to right-click on in the view map or the project map on one of the floor plans and say story settings. That's a quick way to get to the story settings. And then I can go and say maybe take the lower story here and boost it up. I'll just boost it up a couple of feet. So let's just say OK. Now notice that the story reference line went up and the entire building went up. And when I go to 3D, the whole thing just grew beautifully. No gaps. In previous versions of ArchiCAD, there would have been a gap. The storyline would have gone up, the upper elements would have gone up, but the lower walls would not have changed. Now, how did this get taken care of in ArchiCAD 17? This slab here, if we look at it, is set at a certain height, 0, in relationship to the second floor. So it moves up in relationship to the second floor. And the walls, much like they would have before, have their base set on that upper story, that second floor. But new in ArchiCAD 17 is the fact that walls and some other elements as well can be locked in on both bottom and top. So this is saying that the bottom is locked in a small distance below the reference line. Actually, it's going down 1 foot 5 inches, so it's going down to the bottom here. But more important in terms of this demonstration is that the top is linked to the second floor, the upper story, and it's set at 0. What does that mean? It means that if this story moves around, the top of this wall will adjust. Now the top of the wall doesn't have to be at 0, it could be at some other value, just like the bottom, but it's still linked to that story. So whatever that offset is, whether it's 0 or something else, when that story height changes, it will change. So you can see here, this is the way that ArchiCAD defaults to, and it's nice because if there is a story above, it will link the top of it to that story for automatic adjustments. Now let's do one more thing here, and that is this slab here is, let's say we're not going to have a basement, so this is going to be something with a foundation, or perhaps it's going to be a slab on grade. So I'm going to switch it. First of all, what happens if I change it to a different type of flooring? So if I change it to a wood floor with 2 by 10 instead of it was 2 by 12, it's going to have thinner amount of framing, and you can see that the part that stayed constant here was the top of the core. Remember, I had locked that in, saying that it was the core top. Now what happens, now it seems to have some extra skins down below, so this is intended as some type of a ceiling structure here. Now let's look at what happens if we put it as, say, concrete slab on gravel. And now we can see that it's something rather different. So we've got this concrete here, and then we have some space down below. But perhaps we want to do a wood floor over concrete slab, giving it even more complexity. Now when we do that, we bring up a few different issues. So the top of the core is the top of the concrete. And if we look at this, and I'll just open up the composite, here's the structural concrete, which is the core, and then we have airspace up here, followed by subflooring. And these are not core, and they're not finished. The top here, the cherry, is the finish. So this line here is the line where it's at the top of the core. Now, because ArchiCAD's new option allows us to have the top of the core be the reference line, it adjusted the whole thing. Now that could be just fine, but I'm going to actually take it down. I'm going to literally drag this down so that the, and maybe take this down just a little further. There. So now the top of the subfloor here is at the 0. So then we have the finished floor on top of that. You can do it whatever way you want, but you'll notice that this now is saying that its top of core is a small distance below the story. So you can do that any way you want. Now we do have an issue in terms of this whole intersection here. The outer skin of this wall is not passing through. Now it's possible we could adjust the priority and force it to go through, but we might want to actually pull the slab back in so that the core goes down. So let's see how that works. If I go in and zoom in to any part of this and I select that slab, you can see it's sticking all the way out to the end. Now if I go to the corner and use the option to offset the entire outline, then this entire outline could go in or out the same distance. Let's take it the 2 inches in here. And now if we go back to that section, we're going to see that, this wall is now going all the way through, and the slab is actually stopping at the face of framing here. So that's certainly an interesting way to do it. We might want to then take this wall and say that we'd like to pull it back up to this height here. Now what's a little odd, of course I just did one wall and there's another wall in the back end here. So we'd want to do all of them, but this slab here doesn't show a line. Now why is that? It puzzled me at first, and then I looked up the composite. I opened up the composite and I found that the slab has a gravel fill at the bottom and there's no contour line. So that's an option for composites, in this case, to say don't show a line on the bottom of the gravel, because it's not going to be a hard edge. It's just going to be laying on top of the graded soil. So this is just fine. But the other problem is that I'm finding is that we're not even seeing this. There's no, while we're seeing something about the concrete, we're not seeing the gravel. So let's look at the definition of the building material. So we're going to go to the element attributes building materials with this selected, and you can see that down here this gravel fill is one of the ones that's highlighted, and it says that it's going to have a fill in section of gravel fill, which makes sense, and a 3D of Sea River Rock 04. Now let's actually, in order to be able to clean this up fully, let's make all of these walls the same. So I'm going to move this wall back down, and then I'll go to the 3D, and we'll take all of the exterior walls here. Maybe I'll just rotate around, select them. So now I've got all 4 walls like that, and let me just pull them up. So I'll go here and see if I can stretch this up. Let me take it up first to the home story. Now that's exposed this shape, and I'll take it now down to perhaps where it snaps to the bottom of the concrete. So what are we seeing down here? In fact, actually that is the underside. So this is the slab on grade that we're seeing, and we're seeing this dark color here. Now in fact, if we rotate around, I think that we will see, see if I'm lucky enough to get that. There we go. It was the color. You can see this is rather dark, but it's this funny rock. Remember that river rock. So we have 2 issues here. One is that this doesn't look like gravel, and the other is that in that section we're just not seeing this lower area. So remember that if I went to the element attributes building materials, I could see that this was using the gravel fill, and the gravel fill as a building material had this particular fill, this particular material. Let's go now to the appearance of it. Now, building materials are what you make things from. Surfaces in ArchiCAD 17 are the old materials. It's what they look like. So if we take this surface that was River Rock 04, we can see that it's got a texture here that gives it a certain appearance of stones, of river rocks. But this image showing the how it would look, I think this is sort of about 1 story high, about 8 feet high from what I recall calculating at one point. Well, these rocks are rather large. I found that by a little experimentation, if I took them down to 4 inches, which is about 1/10 of the size, basically saying that a single image here, 1 by 1, this would be only just a few inches, or maybe that would be 10 centimeters across. You can see what that does here. Now actually I don't really want to change it to for the river rock, because I might want to use that. I'm going to duplicate it and give it a name, gravel fill. So now in the copy I'm going to go ahead and change this to the smaller grain and say OK, and then I will go and select this fill, or this element, open up its composite. Actually we'll go to the element attributes building materials and say that gravel fill here uses, instead of the river rock, it uses the new gravel fill that I just created. So this says that in 3D the surface appearance by default will be, and we go to 3D, there, this smaller version that looks much more appropriate for gravel fill. Now remember, in this section we're not seeing this down below. Why is that? Well, it turns out that if we go to the fill types and we find the one that was used here, which was 31 gravel fill, and by the way, these numbers are used in the US because they match the Construction Specifications Institute standards, but in international versions you might have similar names but without the numbers. In any event, what I found is that the spacing here for paper, in terms of this, if I zoom out a little bit, you can see that there are some dots, but this spacing is rather too large. So I'm going to again take it about to a much smaller size here. And I did some experimentations, but I found that that this actually gave me a reasonable value. So I've just changed this for any time I use gravel fill and say OK. And now if I zoom out, you can see that that gravel fill is starting to show up properly. Now it turns out if we go to the view menu, on-screen view, and make it a true line weight, we can see how that's starting to look for a drawing. So of course there may be more things that you want to tweak, but right now we have a 3D view that shows the gravel if it was exposed. And maybe we would never expose it on the outside of the building because we'd have terrain, but you know that we can do something like a marquee here. And if we had a marquee and we looked at that, maybe we would be seeing the gravel underneath. In fact, here is the other thing that this is a very nice option to know about. Right now, you can see everything that's being cut through has this dark uniform appearance. This is controlled under the View menu, 3D View Elements in 3D View, Filter and Cut Elements in 3D. And one of the options that you can do is you can switch to show cut surfaces with element attributes. You can also switch to make it just another color, like red, and you can see then this is going to have a little different graphic appearance. That can be very nice for certain presentations. But in this case, what I'd like to demonstrate is that we can choose to use the element attributes, and then if we zoom in or out, it refreshes. You can see that we're seeing the skins. It's rather interesting, a way to do that. And here is the gravel. So we're cutting through this and we're getting a rather easy to understand cutaway of how this building is going to be put together. So I think this is a good point to finish up this tutorial. This has been Eric Bobrow. I look forward to getting your comments and questions on the page down below. Thanks for watching.